Good evening, everybody. Could I have your attention, please, and ask you to have a seat? My name is Bill Poole. I'm Executive Director here at the Clay and Glass Gallery, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. Though I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on territory that was part of the Great Dish shared by the neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. The Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery is situated on the Haldeman Tract that includes 6 miles, ceded by the Crown to the Six Nations, and includes 6 miles on both sides of the Grand River. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here tonight to what for me is really one of the most wonderful nights in the calendar here at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery, the Winifred Shantz Award for Ceramics, and this year the award for Glass. I thought I would start, if I may, by pointing out to you what you might have seen, which is in this morning's, or today's record on the back of the Arts and Life section, a full-page ad. If you haven't seen it, starts, "Let's Celebrate." So this award ceremony is wonderful every year, and what makes it even more special this year is that we are just embarking on our 25th anniversary year. So all of 2018 is our 25th anniversary year. The gallery opened in June of 1993, and in June of 2018 we'll be celebrating on a major weekend, and so we're building to that. But again, the whole of 2018, which will have events and activities throughout the year and special events, is our 25th anniversary year. So we're excited about that. And in the award ceremony tonight, those of you who've been here for the last few years know that we now ask previous winners to talk a little bit about what winning the award meant to them. We refer to them as alumni speakers. And this year, Sheila asked, because of the 25th, the first two winners, Susan Collett, who won the Winifred Shantz Award for Ceramics in 2001, and Julia Reimer, who won the RBC Award for Glass in 2008, to be our alumni speakers. So what you will have tonight, just to give you, since there aren't programs, but just to tell you, and it's similar to what we've done last year, we'll have a few opening announcements, as I'm doing now, and then we'll move to have the two alumni speakers, and then move into the Shantz and then the Glass Award. So and each of the artists will give you a 10-minute artist talk, which is a real mini talk, as you know. It's a pretty tight time frame, but I think what you get out of it is a sense of who they are and what they do, and for the winners this year, why they were the ones who emerged from the jury selection process. So before we just move into that, I'd also, in addition to the 25th anniversary, we're also just coming through a downtime where we've been closed for renovations since the 1st of September. And our hope was that everything would be completely done when we gathered here tonight and again tomorrow afternoon. But as you know, if you've done renovations, things don't always happen quite the way you want them to. But I would say 85% of the work is done, but not everything. So the windows here, or curtain walls as I now call them, dealing with the architects, have yet to be replaced. Same with the Tower Gallery and same in the gift shop. So there are hoarding walls there. But in the next couple of weeks, those will all be installed. What you will notice, I hope, is all new LED lighting in here and in the gallery shop and all the public areas. And there's been a huge amount of work gone on. A new roof, new HVAC equipment, and the lighting, as I said. So that's a $1.3 million project, which was funded by City of Waterloo and the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. So we're very grateful to the city for the leadership it took in securing this grant and getting this work done. So again, we wish that was all done, but it isn't quite. But you would not believe what this place looked like 2 days ago. So kudos to Sheila and her install crew and everybody who pitched in to make it habitable and presentable, beyond presentable. So I also, if I may, like to thank our funders, City of Waterloo, the Ontario Arts Council, Canada Council for the Arts, numerous sponsors, donors, foundations, members who help us, as do the same sorts of people with all not-for-profit organizations. So we're very, very grateful for that support that we've had for many, many years. And just looking at this first slide here, and we'll come to this, but the Winifred Shantz Award for Ceramics is funded by the Kitchener and Waterloo Community Foundation. And this year, the Award for Glass, which up till now had been the RBC Award for Glass, has been funded by a small group of committed supporters. I would also just, before I'm surveying the audience here, and thank you all again for coming, but just to mention, I'm looking around, well, Catherine Fife is here, MPP from Kitchener-Waterloo, who will say a few words in a moment. There are a number of board members here. I know Neil Sargenson's here, Marilyn Allen, our treasurer, Megan Whitfield, Rebecca Short, perhaps others, and so many wonderful guests in the audience tonight. Denis Longchamp and Jonathan Smith from the Art Gallery of Burlington, thank you for making the trip. Our former director, Robert Aktimachuk. Robert, thank you for being here. Bruce Cochran, celebrated, noted Canadian ceramic artist. So, and each of you deserves to be singled out, but you'll forgive me if I don't do that. But just in seeing those folks, I wanted to say a word about them and thank them for coming. Now, once more, Bill. Once more with feeling. Yes, okay. Now, this is the slide that we love to put up ever since we lost Win in February of 2012. But I think all of you here will know, or if you're not, for those who don't, that's Winifred Shantz. And I always like to pay tribute to Win at this moment, because really the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery is the house that Win built. I mean, with Keith, of course, but Keith was, I think, left to his own devices, he might not have done it, I don't know. Is that right, Diana? And we're in the Keith and Winifred Shantz Gallery now, and the awards are being funded through the Keith and Winifred Shantz Fund held at the KW Community Foundation. And this is just such a lovely photo, and right behind Win is Kathy John, who's here again tonight, so we have great loyalty. And I think I see Jim Walker in behind there too, so Jim and Stephanie are here. So you can see once you start coming to these events, you never miss them. And but it's just such a lovely reminder of Win and what she gave to she really virtually created this organization. So I think it's appropriate if we give Win a round of applause. Now, I would like to, I also wanted to, having mentioned board members, I bring apologies and regrets from Tom Mennel, our board chair, who had anticipated or was planning to be here, but as a result of just the situation in his family, he wasn't able to be here, but he sends everyone his best wishes. So I would like now to ask our MPP, Catherine Fife, MPP member for Kitchener-Waterloo, to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you, and I really do appreciate the fact that Bill also did the land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are actually a very important part of reconciliation. I like to refer it as reconciliation because that's what we really need. And I live very close to the gallery, and it's always on my mind. I'm 2 blocks away, so I had a nice commute here versus Queen's Park commute. And I do want to say that as I was reflecting on reviewing the bios of the 2 artists that are being acknowledged this evening, I thought that it is indeed an exercise in resiliency and strength and commitment to follow your art and to honor the skills that you have and to translate that creativity into the beautiful works of art that we have here today. And I also want to acknowledge as well is that this place is an exercise in strength and resiliency and courage. To have this place in our community is indeed a gift for the entire community. Some people don't acknowledge it, some people don't understand that it is, until you come in here and you have this place that you can actually view beautiful pieces of art and creativity. And so with that, I would like to honor and to recognize the work of the two artists that are being recognized this evening. And thank you all for being here. And as the member of Provincial Parliament for the riding of Kitchener-Waterloo, sincere congratulations. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our curator, Sheila Macbeth.
Hi there, good evening everyone. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the past winners of these distinguished awards. I'm very excited to hear from both Suzanne Collett and Julia Reimer tonight. So, Suzanne Collett was the first recipient of the Winifred Shantz Award for Ceramics in 2001 and studied printmaking and ceramics at the Cleveland Institute of Art. Various publications, including Canadian Art and Ceramics, Art and Perception, have featured her work. Suzanne received her letters from the IAC, the International Academy of Ceramics, in 2007, and RCA, Royal Canadian Academy of Ceramics status in 2008. Her sculptures are included in numerous private and public collections, including the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, the Gardner Museum of Ceramic Art, and our own collection here at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery. Her work is also on permanent display in Rideau Hall, in the private office of the Governor General of Canada. So we are in great company tonight, and I'm so excited to hear from Suzanne Collett. I remember when she won, so this is really exciting for me. Let's welcome Suzanne Collett.
Thank you, Sheila. That's good, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sheila, for inviting me tonight. I'm really happy to be here. So this is my studio on Niagara Street in downtown Toronto, and when I graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art, I was determined that I would have a full-time studio practice.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Can't hear me?
We'll have to get you. Maybe move this close. Can we do it on this side?
Techie. There we go.
Okay, so I hope that's better. Okay, so this is my studio where I spend a lot of time. When I graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art, I was determined to have a full-time studio practice. I have a room for ceramics, packing and shipping, and I also have a printmaking press. Perhaps the most interesting thing about me is that I'm a printmaking major from school, and I took ceramics in only my very last year, but I took to it quickly, and I could see a living by it. The work that I proposed to the Winifred Shantz Prize was from this series. As a printmaker, you can see I worked a lot with an intersection of the two-dimensional into the three-dimensional. I also took a very linear approach, perhaps from my drawing background. So I used a lot of wire as an after addition to firing in the pieces in the kiln. These are large, tall scale. I could really expand beyond the parameters of my kiln. I then realized that I could use the nichrome wire, which was the wires that the kiln is fired by. The guy was in there cleaning the kiln one day, and I saved the wires and started to use them integrally in the piece. So you could see that the sculptures were almost like drawings, and very much the wire became a terrific substructure so that I could gain support and gain scale. You can see the coils are from the kiln wires right there. This related very well to the drawings. I find that each discipline feeds the other. The printmaking feeds the clay and vice versa. The prints are composed from stitched industrial-grade roofing copper, which is very pliable and workable, and it really appealed to me, the flexibility of it and the expansion of size. So not only did the clay also feeds the prints, in that I was tearing and stuffing and piercing the paper, and I don't think I would have done that had it not been for my exposure to clay in the last year. So all of these things I was applying to for the Winifred Shantz Prize because I was trying to maintain a full-time studio business. And my specialty was fireplace tile installation. I worked with a lot of top designers in Toronto. And it was great for crossover sales because people would come to the studio and look at sample boards and then buy a print to go over the fireplace. So this is how I was making my living. And applying to the Winifred Shantz Prize was really important to me because I have very colorful business of art and the art of business, which is very intertwined in order for me to make a living at it. And I was trying to preserve the sculptural works that I showed you earlier and to keep that a large part of the pie. So when I won the prize, I decided to go to China, and I went for 2 months, landing in Shanghai. I went south on the train, 15 hours, to the Jingdezhen. In 2001, this was the Sanbao Art Institute, which has changed now and grown. But it was really an incredibly interesting Ming Dynasty buildings that were composed together, and it was an international cast of artists there, so I was exposed to all kinds of things. So the incredible bounty that is China was like my grad school, really. It was like my introduction to ceramics. So I didn't go, and not only the ceramics were inspiring to me, but everything I saw there, an umbrella factory. I have a whole show on China, so I did not go with any preconceived ideas. I went with an open slate. I left all my business responsibilities behind, and I really wanted to soak up everything. So a bit of deer in the headlights, but I was drawing. I was even drawing with porcelain, and Paul Mathieu was there at that time, and I had a lot of disasters because I hadn't worked with porcelain at all, or very much with clay, and I was building things quite large that were caving in and crashing, and Paul says, "Oh, Suzanne, you should really have a disaster slideshow. It would be fabulous," because I had everything coming out of the kiln. But what really struck me there was the tiered landscape, and thinking that, oh, look, it's such a natural beauty, but it actually was man-made and systematically farmed, and that started to inflect in how I built the pieces. So this layering idea really came into the work. But what I learned there about teamwork and different techniques, like throwing really thick and then carving down to get the shape that you need, and making things in parts, things that I was seeing that I did not know were going to affect me so deeply later. So I just took in the marvel of everything and just was astounded by it, and it was an incredible seed planting time for me with the Winifred Shantz. So that the majesty and the superhuman scale of what was created there, the strength of that work to the very fine, fragile porcelain really sparked a theme that is constant in my work now, that strength and that fragility that exists simultaneously really in all things. So when I came back to the studio, it took a couple of years, because just because you see things that are interesting doesn't mean you can just take them. They have to make sense through your own filter. So as I started to build, and I didn't go to porcelain right away, but I started to use paper clay. And it's an earthenware paper clay, so it's 25% pulp in there for strength. So I realized I could fire these slides. I guess it's not very dark in here, but the lower part is fired bisque, and then I can build on top and keep building up to increase the scale. This piece is in the collection here at the Clay and Glass Gallery, and it's really instrumental to me because it defines that pushing to the limit, pushing over the limit. This is the entire length of my oval kiln, so it's 3 feet wide and about 28 inches high. And this is everything that the Winifred Shantz Prize gave me. So the scale started to go larger, the tiles started to get a little smaller part of the pie in my business, and started to get some, the scale went up using steel as an anchor point to secure the work, and then I started to apply to exhibitions here at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery and Tom Thompson, etc., and also received attention from art consultants. And this is something I didn't know about, certainly in school, but they've placed the work in collections and places that I wouldn't have been able to have a reach. This is from the Four Seasons Hotel in Toronto. I have 4 pieces up in the presidential and royal suites, and it's just everything I learned in tile making and things that I learned from China, everything going forward, each step grows to the next point. And the printmaking too, I bring that along with me, and as I say, each discipline feeds the other, and that's in the lobby of the Four Seasons. This is the piece at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and you can see I'm using, again, that's the copper sheeting. I use the copper that I use from the printmaking to stitch the clay together. So the Winifred Shantz Prize was a real bridge for me from my working in my studio pretty much alone with a few assistants out to the world. It really outreach for me. It was really instrumental in that. Not only in imagery and drawing and things that have come later. These prints are like 2014 and these are 4 feet long. You can see even the format was very influential from that first trip to China. So the stacking in the prints and the stacking in the clay, I started to leave the vessel form, and I realized that your layers of your life are not always exactly even and measured, that things come at different angles and unexpectedly you fall and things happen. And so that piece is at Sèvres Porcelain Museum, and I started to also enter international competitions that I learned about, and this is in the Taiwan Museum from the Biennale there, but you can see that I'll often have different series showing at the same time because one feeds, I can't quite leave it, and I'm moving on to the next series. This is the Korean Biennale. And this, I had a great opportunity in 2015 to meet the Queen and Prince Philip. This piece is in the collection of Canada House for the opening ceremonies there. So I flew over to London, and I highly recommend if you're in London to go and visit Canada House. It's quite extraordinary, full of Canadian artists' work from all across Canada, and each of the provinces is represented by boardroom tables with the wood from that province, and the art is really, really wonderful. So that was a great experience outside of the studio. But that series just then of maze, which are tall and stacked, they started to feel static to me and a little tight, and I was getting too easy for me or too comfortable. I was almost doing them before I was knowing, and so I started to kind of knock them over. And this one was kind of in the doghouse, and then I entered it into the Korean Biennale in 2015, and it was accepted. And so you never know, but that movement that I was looking for, again, comes back to China and seeing these things come through the kiln and learning about adversity, that good things can come from that. And that, like Churchill said, that success is failure upon failure without any lack of enthusiasm. It's just like having a full-time studio practice. So the color and the business of art, it still is important to me, and I still have deadlines and all of those things that keep it going. But I've left the vessel quite a lot and moved into glaze experimentation and pushing those things that I really did not get in school that come in the making and in the doing. So this series of aggregates are a smaller scale. Oh, the slides are sorry about that, but they're on a cement basis. I've been working with cement in the last 5 years to make, just to take the piece out of the environment into its own environment. And you really can't see that, but this is a print, and it's a blind embossing. So I'm even sculpting the paper now using wet, washy Japanese papers and making a substrate that I'm like drawing with the press, back and forth through the press, adding things under the paper, and it picks up a history of work. So it's a relief piece. I'm sorry you can't see that. And that print also lets you know what's happening with the clay, and that I'm now working with the clay in a liquid form and experimenting again and pushing, also using wire as an undersubstructure for support. These pieces are about this scale. And they're fired 20 times or so back in to get that layer in history of the work. And these are racines. Some of these culminate in 24-karat gold droplets and opalescence that I've been working with. And it was from an exhibition at Sandra Ainsley Gallery, a solo show just the last 6 months ago, where I showed all the series, and you can still see the reference from China, the large-scale pieces in the background. So I thank Winifred Shantz very much. She really had amazing insight, and she knew what was required to have a life in the arts, and yeah, she was a really nice lady. And she helped me to make that, keep that studio going, and I wish congratulations to the winners today, and I hope the prize sustains you for years to come.
Okay, so now we'll hear from Julia. Just let me make sure we got this going on here. What's going on? Okay, hold on, guys. So, Julia Reimer was the first recipient of the RBC Award for Glass in 2018 and studied at the Alberta College of Art and Design. She's received scholarships and awards from the Canada Council for the Arts, the Alberta Foundation of the Arts, and the Corning Museum of Glass. Julia maintains a full-time studio practice at Firebrand Studio Glass in Black Diamond, Alberta. Her practice includes varied aspects, from small functional glass objects to private commissions to large-scale public sculpture. And I've had the pleasure to work with Julia on this show that is debuting officially tomorrow for over a year and a half, I think we said at dinner. And I'm just so excited that she's debuting new work in the Trajectories exhibition. So great to have you back, and come on up. Welcome.
I think we're going to have to adjust this a little bit.
Would you like it? Just closer to the...
Yeah, maybe over here.
Yeah.
And unlike Susan, I'm going to have to use some notes because with my...
That's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is.
How's that? Here's a good...
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? Good. I'm just a little bit shorter than everybody else. Thanks so much for including me in this event. It's just really nice to be here and, see all the beautiful work in the gallery and see the renovations. So, as Sheila mentioned, I'm from Black Diamond, Alberta, which is about an hour southwest of Calgary, and where I have a studio called Firebrand Glass that I share with my husband, Tyler Rock. I came to glass in a circuitous way. I started out with a background in political science and economics, and I was working for an oil company, and at about the age of 30, I took a glassblowing class at the Alberta College of Art and Design in the evening as a continuing education class, and I just was completely hooked. So I quit my job, and I went back to art school. My parents didn't have the same reaction. While I was at the Alberta College of Art and Design, I was completely obsessed with glass blowing. And I discovered that glass blowing is really difficult, and glass is a very difficult medium to work with. And because of that difficulty, I really wanted to master the material, and that led me to want to make things that were straight and square and to feel like I controlled the material. And so, that desire to make straight lines and, even kinds of shapes is not something glass really wants to do. It wants to be soft and fluid and round. And that desire to control the material, combined with my interest in these sort of straight sort of shapes, led me to an interest in architects and designers at the turn of the century who made these beautiful, minimal kind of shapes. And I noticed that a lot of them, those objects, really still have a resonance today. They're still really beautiful objects. And I was really curious about, what was that connection between these, architects and designers and their influence on craft object design. So luckily for me, I received an artist residency at the Corning Museum of Glass, where I got to do some research about this topic. And so I had access to the studio to make my work, to the museum to study their collection, and their library, which is fantastic. During this time, my research kept on leading me back to an architect named Rennie Mackintosh, who's a Scottish architect. And it seemed to me he was sort of the first one who thought, oops, sorry, I gotta change my slide. He was the first one who sort of thought about not just designing a building, but also designing the objects in that building. And he collaborated with his wife, Margaret MacDonald, to make some really beautiful buildings, but also very beautiful stained glass pieces and furniture. And one of the things that I learned through that research was the notion of letting the material speak for itself, of letting them expressing within the object the essential elements about the material. So that led me to create some pieces that were sort of reflective of that idea, pieces that reflected some of the essential qualities of glass. So when you're blowing glass, you never stop turning it. You know, it's never static, it's always moving. So I made these pieces called Perpetual motion bowls, and they spin on an axis, so they turn, which turns out not to be something that lots of people want to buy. I really liked making them, but apparently moving glass makes people nervous. And you can see the design elements in them sort of reflect that movement. This piece is called Rose Vases, and it's an homage to Rennie Mackintosh and his collaboration with Margaret MacDonald. If you go to the Glasgow School of Art, you'll see these beautiful design elements in the metalwork that are an abstraction of a rose, and I just thought they were so beautiful that I just couldn't help trying to make them in glass, which is really challenging and much easier to do in metal. These bowls are called Handheld Bowls, and they were about embracing glass's qualities, its softness, its fluidity, its liquidity. And the other thing I learned from that research was the influence of Japanese craft design on modern craft design, and how it influenced architects and designers at the turn of the century, and kind of the debt that modern craft design has to that influence. And I was just really curious about that influence. And so when the application came up for the RBC Glass Award, I thought, well, what do I want to research? And I knew exactly what I wanted to find out more about, and that was to try and find out about more of that influence of Japanese craft design on modern craft design. I was really daunted when I found out that I won the award. I was really daunted about, like, how am I going to find out about this? Because I've never been to Japan before. I don't speak Japanese. You know, how am I going to approach this? And I have to say that, like, when I look back on it, there was so much serendipity and luck. The people that are pictured in this photo, besides myself and my husband, are the Satomis. And there's a really interesting story about how I met them. That it just seems kind of impossible thinking about in the past tense. I come from a small town of 3,000 people, and it turns out we have a family there that had recently immigrated from Japan. And when they found out that I was going to Japan, they were so excited, and they said, well, we'll tutor you in Japanese, and we'll introduce you to our friends and family back in Japan. And they introduced us to their in-laws, the Satomis, who run a glass gallery in Nagoya, and who represent the work of one of Japan's Menge glass masters, Kodani-san, which is, I can't even believe that it worked out like that. So they introduced us to Kodani-san, and we went to visit his studio, where he blows glass every day, and he makes these beautiful, functional objects, and wears a white shirt while doing it. And he was just amazing because he built his own equipment and he built most of his own tools, and he just had such a zest for his practice. The other coincidence was that we met Masahiro Sasaki, who's pictured in this photo with his work, and he is a contemporary glass artist in Japan, and we met him at a Canadian glass conference. And he said, if you come to Japan, I'll organize some workshops for you to teach and, introduce you to other people. And I was just so inspired by the beautiful functional objects that he makes and other artists that he introduced us to, such as Makiko Ivy. Sorry, I'm just going to read what I wrote about that. And I just think that what really drew me to their work was how they combined, their love of nature into beautiful functional objects. And I think that they also really conveyed in their pieces some of the essential properties of glass. And I just found this really inspiring. Another coincidence was just before we left to go to Japan, I received a phone call from a gallery in Ottawa saying that the Prime Minister's office was commissioning me to make a piece. And so we made the piece, and we had a really short time frame to make it, and it all went really smoothly. And then when I got back home, just before Canada Day, they said that I heard from the gallery that they were presenting the piece on Canada Day to the Emperor and Empress of Japan. And it's kind of funny because this piece is sort of what started out that journey, and I just think it's, a real Kuna Matata moment, so that was kind of special. Although I'm really happy I didn't know in advance that's who it was being given to. Another really big influence in my career is my father passed away a couple of years ago, and we moved out to the countryside from Calgary. And sort of as a way of dealing with that loss, I spent a lot of time walking out in the area around the Rockies with our dog, just as a way to deal with the grief. And on those walks, I just noticed the beauty in the simplest things. And, seeing just the minute details of what surrounded me. I'd often take photos and then think about what inspired me about them and bring it back to my studio. And ended up making a series of work sort of based on that realization of, the beauty in the smallest objects, but also feeling like, we really have no control over life or death. And so this series of work, as well as the next couple of slides, is about, all those things that we do to try and control and quantify life. So this piece is called Growth Rings, and it's about that sort of measuring, quantitative approach to nature. This one is called Air Control, and it's about sort of trying to control things that are happening when really we don't have much control. And this one is called Water Gauge, and it's about that same notion of control, but sometimes how nature just finds its own way, how it resists our intrusions, and often it's like the river that finds its way around the dam. The next series of images or pieces that came later on in the series and sort of are more about, recovering from that loss and that grief and sort of seeing the beauty despite it all, noticing that, in those deep moments of grief that, life is blooming all around us and we sort of seem to walk past it every day. And So creating pieces that sort of talk about that, that life, those places where life blooms and unfolds. Another big impact in my career was a couple of years ago. My husband, Tyler Rock, who's also a glass artist, went to do his master's in Australia, and we traveled to Adelaide, where there's the University of South Australia and a very strong glass community. And while I was there, I noticed that there was a real intersection between craft artists and the landscape, and how there was sort of a singular expression of something that was really unique of the combination of the two. And I met some really interesting artists working in glass. Gabriella Bassetto, who makes these objects that sort of reference pigs' bellies and intestines from her youth growing up on a farm. Kirsty Ray, who makes pieces that are kind of minimalist expressions of her memories of growing up in the countryside. I had the good fortune to be able to do some artist residencies while I was there. So I worked at the University of South Australia and worked with the students there to do experiments. The Canberra School of Art, the Canberra Glass Centre, where they have an amazing glassblowing studio and kiln forming studio. And then I took the experiments that I did at both of these residencies and then created finished pieces at the Jam Factory, which is a training center in Adelaide where they have programs in glass, ceramics, metals, and furniture making. And then developed this series of work. This piece is called Flotsam, and here's a detailed shot of it. And this piece is about, you know, all the things that you find washed up on the beach, and how sometimes they're so graceful in their decaying state. Even the trash that washed up looked elegant. This series is called Burrow, and it was made these pieces were made because of something that I learned in Australia, that, you know, often there's plants or insects and animals that live in the ground for years and years in sort of a semi-dried out state, and then when the rains come, they come alive. And it kind of blew my mind that, you know, in this sort of lifeless seeming landscape, there was all this life living under the ground. Some of these experiments that I did in my artist residencies are pieces that have ended up developing into the pieces that I have here at the exhibition. This is an early experiment for my Cocoon series pieces that are here in the Trajectory show. And these pieces are about places that harbor life. And in the use of color and texture, I wanted to draw attention to that sort of specialness and reverence that I have for those places. This is a kind of a source photograph for my Gossamer series pieces. This is an early experimental piece that I made working on them, and then the final photograph of the pieces that are here in the exhibit. And for me, what really drew me to that early image was just about those protective casings that house and harbor life. And I think that for me, these pieces, what I love about them is how their tonality, texture, and the way they capture light sort of expresses that reverence. Last year, I worked on a public art sculpture with my husband, Tyler Rock, for Canada's 150th celebration. And even though this sculpture is about 20 times larger than anything else I normally make, it shares some of the similar themes and ideas of my other series of work. You can see some of the detailed shots of this sculpture that there is imagery of animal tracks, river valleys, teepee rings. So the small things that help locate us in a space, the small things that help us know where we are. When I reflect back onto winning the RBC Award, I just think it is such a gift for my career, a gift that helped me satiate my curiosity and answer some questions, a gift that allowed me to meet artists around the world and to learn from them and to incorporate techniques and ideas into my own art practice. So for everyone who was involved in organizing this award, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you, Julia. That was, both presentations were wonderful. Thank you very much. And just, I wanted to just add two people to note here for you who are also here. Ito Lila Lefrancois, who won the award last year. Did you, or was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago. Okay, I'm getting confused. I'm getting old. And sorry? Yeah, Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. Sorry. And who won? What year did you win? Pardon? What year? The year before you. Okay. So Cheryl Wilson-Smith. So their work is in the show Trajectories, which will open tomorrow as well. And just one, as I cast my eyes over the crowd, I meant to do this at the start in acknowledging people. But Willie Nassau, who's sitting right in front of me now, who is longest serving volunteer here at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery. Certainly, I should apologize for not acknowledging you, Willie, at the outset. I was casting my eyes about, and I missed you. I'm sorry. So now it's my pleasure to move on to the presentation of the 2017 Winifred Shantz Award for Ceramics, and the winner is Zimra Beiner from Calgary. Zimra studied ceramics at Sheridan College, NASCAD University, and received an MFA from Alfred University in 2012. His work has been exhibited throughout the United States and Canada, including exhibitions at the David Winton Bell Gallery at Brown University, Cross Mackenzie Gallery in Washington, D.C., and the Gardner Museum. Recent honors include NCECA Emerging Artist Award and nomination for the RBC Emerging Artist Award in Ceramics. Recent residencies include the Berlin Ceramics Center in Germany, private studio in China. He is currently an assistant professor in ceramics at the Alberta College of Art and Design in Calgary. And just to let you know, I think you know that each of the award winners wins $10,000. And so the $10,000 prize will enable Zimra to spend 3 months during the summer of 2018 working and doing research in Los Angeles with the goal of immersing himself in the ceramic history of the city while experiencing the role ceramics plays in contemporary art today. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Zimra and ask him to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming. I'm going to read this to keep it brief. It's a real privilege to be here today accepting the Winifred Shantz Award. I'm very grateful for the generous financial support and the encouragement this recognition provides me. I grew up in Toronto, so it's very nice to be so close to home after moving around North America essentially for the past 10 years. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank particularly my Canadian teachers, mentors, and peers, specifically Ken Gangbar, who I took my first pottery class with back in 2001 or 2. Bruce Cochran, who was my first teacher at Sheridan College, Neil Forrest, Walter Ostrom, and of course my brother Gabriel, my stepmother Rebecca, and my dad Ronnie, who have supported me enormously and are all here tonight, so thanks so much. I love the challenge of being an artist. I'm really astonished by the stamina required to continuously straddle the line between developing ease and confidence with material and what seems like ever-increasing personal doubt about my work. For the past 15 years or so, I've had some irrational desire to invent my own language of line, volume, color, and composition that's physical, direct, and non-verbal in order to understand, translate, and recontextualize the things for which I have enormous admiration and skepticism. So my work has evolved, particularly in ceramics, from making vessels to examining the still life to most recently thinking through stillness itself, which is a little bit ironic because I haven't sat still for a long time now. But I finally settled in Calgary, which I'm very happy about. However, my attention throughout this has remained focused on the relationship between objects and place. About 5 or 6 years ago, when I was in grad school here, the question that seemed most pressing was, how does one navigate the home, the studio, and the gallery as places which represent the everyday, the life of the artist, and the institution of art? So on the left, the myth of the artist Brancusi has been carefully constructed as the isolated labor in the studio. And this construction was actually made partly by him and partly by Marcel Duchamp, who coached him into this role, which is quite strange. And on the right, Eva Hesse's artistic process seems more honestly represented. And this is perhaps a little bit more closely related to my vision of being an artist, which is that one thing simply leads to another. It seems like a train of thought. Gabriel Orozco challenges my methodology since he believes that an artist's studio is artificial and therefore works from home as a way of diminishing the gap between art and life. I had to work very hard to find images of his home. So how does one diminish this gap within a context of ceramics which requires a studio? And so this photograph has always been quite powerful to me as a symbol of the sacrifice necessary to be an artist. You can see here Gertrude Movald's studio. Her bed is right beside her clay objects, and she died tragically, and this has always kind of been ingrained in my head. So here are some studio shots. I tend to operate by drinking lots of coffee, I pace around a lot, I make an enormous amount of things, and it's manic and chaotic, and then I carefully edit and try to make sense of the chaos to the point where I believe it's worthy of presentation. And this is sort of the product of those thoughts and trying to come to terms with all those difficult questions I had in my head at the time. And I was also thinking enormously about the way things are made and how to use my own work as molds to make work. And so the studio became a place where the objects in the studio became tools in the same way that I was representing tools of daily life, and that would all synthesize, hopefully, and then be presented in a gallery. So here, the sphere was used as a mold to make this object here. And it became a bit of a cycle where one object would lead to another. The Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, where my mother lives, is a place I've spent a lot of time, It's a small museum in Oxford, and it always makes me question my relationship to the history of man-made objects, my ability to sift through this complex history. And it's obviously something I'm fascinated by. While I find these collections incredibly rich and allow me to discover obscure sources with handwritten notes about functions that I didn't know existed, I'm also compelled by generic things, such as banal electrical boxes, Home Depot aesthetics, and absurd cat scratch towers one would find at a box store. And that happened by living in suburban America, where that was the reality of the place I lived. My attraction to clay as a material that's direct, sensitive to touch and timing, and has a unique ability to record the body keeps me excited and hopeful that I'll see something I haven't seen before. These are a few drawings. This goal of seeing things in a material that is inherently formless led me to investigate Chinese scholars' rocks over the past 2 years, and in fact led me to China, where I spent 2 months this summer. I'm captivated by the ability of these objects of contemplation to redefine abstraction and navigate the complex relationship between object and display, knowledge and imagination, reality and fiction. This was my studio in Lancaster, which was not much bigger than a bathroom stall, and made some very large things in it and taught me to be very resourceful. And an exhibition in Baltimore, which connects a little bit to Brancusi, I think. And most recently, I've moved to Calgary and had an exhibition at the art school, in fact. And this was the culmination of a year and a half worth of work. Art has the ability to act as a record of time and place, while serving to rejuvenate and contribute to better understanding and constantly redefining our perception. I'm therefore very hopeful that art will continue to remain necessary, and that I'll use the generous support of the Winifred Shantz Award to sustain my passion for ceramics in order to make work with depth, which makes a significant contribution to the arts. Thank you again, and I'd love to answer any questions after this, so thank you.
So thank you very much, Zimra. That was wonderful. Now I'd like to invite Neil McLaren and, sorry, I'm blanking on everyone's name tonight, Diana Smith, Diana Shantz Smith, to come to make the presentation to Zimra.
It's always a pleasure and an honor to present the Winifred Shantz Award. Diane and I were commenting earlier that this is our 6th year of representing Win at these events, which means I have been trying always to think of new aspects of her life to recount at each year's presentation. So many of you who are here have your own stories of Win, and your tales are often better than what I can relate. But sometimes the day itself helps. As I was driving over for our brief planning meeting this afternoon, the beauty of the winter countryside struck me, and I thought, the necessity of moving the date of the awards to January was not so bad. Today's date is only a week away from Epiphany. a time symbolic of travel and discovery. Indeed, the word epiphany has come to mean that moment when thought and effort come together in new and exciting ways. How appropriate. Then I remembered that I was driving my car with the heated seat turned on. So not so much, you know. But let's keep the thought. As we are hearing, the awards tonight are about travel, sometimes literally, and sometimes within the art of the artist. And they are also about discovery. They represent a chance for our artists to write new chapters in the book of their life and their art. That was always what Win wished for all artists, and her gift continues to provide the opportunity to Zimra tonight. As for the rest of us, Win would want and appreciate your support, shown by your presence here in this gallery that both she and Keith felt to be a vital part of the KW community, and that many of you have continued to strive to maintain and improve. So join with me in congratulating Zimra and know that Win is waiting for that next chapter from him and from us.
Thank you, Neil and Diana and Zimra. And now it is my pleasure to move us along to the 2017 Award for Glass. And as Neil said, and as you would have gathered, the reason we didn't do it in November, as we usually do and will again next year or this year, was the construction underway. And also just to mention, after we are celebrating here and the exhibition tomorrow, 9 years of winners of the RBC Award for Glass. We're very grateful to RBC for having funded the award over those 9 years. But this year, they elected not to, so a group of supporters within the gallery family came forward to fund the award in 2017. Our hope will be to find a corporate supporter going forward, but nobody wanted to allow this to, nobody wanted to hiatus, particularly in the 10th year. So this is an award we're committed to maintaining. And the winner of the 2017 Award for Glass is Montserrat Duran Muntadas, a Catalan-born artist living in Montreal. In 2010, Montserrat graduated from the Faculty of Fine Arts at the University of Barcelona, and prior to that, in 2007, graduated from the National Glass Center of Segovia. Over the years, she has participated in more than 30 national and international group exhibitions, including the SOFA Chicago 2016, the European Glass Context 2016 in Denmark, and the European Glass Festival 2015 in Poland. Also, she was a finalist and laureate for several awards, such as an award from Fusion, the Ontario Clay and Glass Association, and the Bourse for Seagal. Montserrat will use the $10,000, or the $10,000 prize will allow Montserrat to dedicate a year to research and exploratory work in glass blowing and flame working studios, as well as spending time on researching textile work. Montserrat, it's my great pleasure to invite you to come and make your presentation.
More sharper than you. So, good evening. Since English is my fourth language and that I have not mastered it yet, I will read my presentation. Sorry. So I, Montserrat Duran Muntadas, would like to start by thanking the jury of the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery, as well as the gallery's supporting group that have made this hour possible. I cannot fully express in words the gratitude that I feel after winning such a prestigious award, as well as the honor that it represents for my glass work. In 2007, I graduated with honors from the Escuela del Vidrio de la Real Fábrica de Cristales de la Granja. It's a long name. And in 2010, I completed a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Barcelona, Spain. I came to Canada in 2012 to do a 3-month-long glassblowing internship, but instead I discovered a country with many new opportunities as well as some very nice people, so I decided that I wanted to live here. Changing culture, language, climate, and leaving family, friends, and a way of life behind makes you feel quite lonely in front of any situation. This is the reason that I became very productive and creative in Canada, allowing me to express my emotions through my work. My recent work process started about 2 years ago, when I had a period of self-reflection. The first piece that I created from this period was Matter. In Spain, there is a tradition that it's passed from a generation to generation. Once the birth of a child was announced, the baby's mother and the other woman of the family will get together to start the baby's dowry. During the pregnancy, women will gather to choose the fabrics, threads, colors, and patterns that they will use to make the child's clothes, bed linen, etc. Often, the skilled future grandmother will embroider the linen with pretty floral patterns and the newborn child's initials. So, you can see, on the mannequin, the bed linen that were embroidered by my mother with my initials, while inside the mannequin, there are flame-worked blown glass pieces. I have always combined my two biggest passions, art and glass, in a way that one idea could be transformed into contemporary jewelry, wearable art, sculptures, or installations. Following the creation of Matter, I created a contemporary jewelry collection combining fabric and flame-worked blown glass entitled Maiotica. I've always paired different materials with glass, which I believe enrich the expressive potential of my work, while allowing me to explore different possibilities and adding an aspect of unpredictability to the way that is perceived. I have worked with paper, fiber, and other organic substances conjointly with flame-worked and blown glass, before ultimately pairing it with fabrics. In 2016, I was accepted for a glass-blowing residency at the Norlands Creative Glass Centre in Scotland. During this time, I was inspired by my flame-worked and fabric jewelry series Maiotica to create a new series of glass sculptures. The objects were very similar, except that they went from being small to much larger. After coming back to Montreal, I continued this work process and created the project Entrañas. What if I create instead of procreating? It all started with a change, an inner transformation. At the age of 13, I was diagnosed with a uterine malformation that endangered my fertility, as well as the potential of living as a normal woman. But what is a normal woman these days? That is the underlying question that I, as an artist, ponder with my artistic work. In an era where an illness or an anomaly is a shared condition, through its many developments making it seem almost normal. What if we accept this anomaly and perceive its beauty? My work tend to embody the openness of the public environment in which they coexist, with their flame-worked glass counterparts creating more intimate details. This is a place where 3D glass forms and embroidery, symbolizing deformity, express fragility through their transparency, and where textures are supported by printed fabric representing the world that create them. Up to the point, I had mostly worked with pre-printed fabrics, but this summer I decided to create my own, as well as to use those that were designed by other artists. I now found myself having to face the challenge of creating glass pieces that will be complementary to these new illustrations. These changes have made me realize that I have no choice but to continue this research process while focusing on the development of new discoveries and use them as the inspiration for new fabric and glass works. I intend to focus on uncovering their symbolism, meaning while maintaining the balance and originality of these two very distinctive materials. This quest will assuredly allow me to broaden my knowledge as well as create a new narrative framework. I think that my latest sculpture, Des Amours Microscopiques, that was created with the silk screen printed illustration of artist Ilana Pichon, with whom I experimented with digital embroidery, is the first step towards entering a wall of new possibilities and producing results. Furthermore, this hour for glass from the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery will allow me to dedicate myself to at least 1 year of research and exploration work in the glass blowing and flame working studios, as well as allowing me to focus on researching textile work, as well as perhaps finding some answers to my self-questioning. In conclusion, I would like to thank all the people that have supported me as an artist. My wonderful husband, Jean-Simon, who patently calms me during my moments of self-doubting and has helped me to blow on glass. My new adoptive Quebecois family that have accepted me with open arms. My own family that have always supported me, even if they thought that I had crazy ideas. My friends that have always understood that I was dedicated to my work and that sometimes my life gravitates around a sculpture. Without you all, I will not be here today. So, muchas gracias, merci beaucoup, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Montserrat. That was absolutely lovely. I'd now like to introduce Jerry Davidson. Ask Jerry to join me here this evening. Many of you will know Jerry is a member of our board here at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery and is also a glass artist. And so I just asked Jerry if she would join me to say a few words about Montserrat and her work.
Thank you, Bill.
And help me with the presentation.
Definitely. Thank you very much. When Bill asked me to say a few words about Montserrat and her work, I was delighted to oblige. I first saw Montserrat's work when it was exhibited at SOFA in 2016, and I was amazed and delighted at how she was able to successfully combine glass and many other textures and substances. Her work is vibrant, and it seems to me harks back to your Spanish heritage. Her new work is on display here, and it's continuing to push the envelope, and I am honored to present you with the award for 2017 Glass Award. Congratulations.
So that concludes the formal portion of this evening's the presentations, I should say. But now what we have for you is a lovely catered event. The wine will be flowing. Tim Lewis will be playing here at the keyboard, and we will party like it's our 25th anniversary. And so I hope you'll all stay. Now that you've had a chance to see presentations from the four artists, I know you'll have things to ask them. And so I'm absolutely delighted to have had you all here, and let's have a really nice social time now. And I should tell you as well that the exhibition that's installed around you, Trajectories, opens tomorrow at 2 p.m. You'd be most welcome to come again, and we'll introduce the artists present who I mentioned earlier. So thank you, everybody. And Tim Lewis, where are you? Here you are. Okay. Thank you. And the bar is open.